Well, it's time for an election review. Now, initially for this election in the Scottish Family Party, we discussed the possibility of standing, and we decided not to. We thought this election is going to be dominated by Brexit. The first past the post system doesn't suit us. Most of our policies are really for devolved matters. If we stood candidates, we'd get very low results. Even people who agreed with us completely might well not vote for us. They actually vote for another party tactically. If you look at elections, generally parties make very simple points. Get Brexit done. Scotland decides its own future, whatever. A lot of our points, they take a bit more explaining, and it's quite hard to do that in an election campaign. People have to reciprocate and make a bit of time to listen to what you've got to say. And that often doesn't happen in an election campaign. But then we had a change of heart. And I think what prompted it was probably the John Swinney incident. I and Don Marshall as well, we went along to a question time with John Swinney, and we got a couple of questions in about the sex education materials. And when I was going into detail about them, order broke down in the meeting. People were trying to snatch the mic off me. A woman was waving her arms around in the air, and John Swinney was struggling to answer, etc. And that video reached a lot of people. It ended up reported in the mainstream media a little bit. We've got a lot of new members. It was a really good week for the Scottish Family Party. So I thought, election time, this is the opportunity to make that sort of thing happen again. Because I can sit here and make a video and make my point really clearly and thoroughly and very detailed, showing evidence. And, people will watch the video, it'll have some impact. But if you can get a public figure involved and get a bit of drama and theatre, then there's a much greater impact. Now, you may think you wish that wasn't the way it is. Okay, I would agree. I wish that wasn't the way it is. But it is. So that's the game we're playing. And, there's no point complaining about the rules. We just have to try and make the most of it. So I thought in an election campaign, right, let's think about Ian Blackford, say, maybe the most high-profile SNP MP. So in his constituency during the campaign, I was imagining there'd be hustings meetings, 5 or 6. When I stood in an election before in my constituency here in Edinburgh, there were 6 local hustings, and every candidate went to every single one of them. It was just assumed everyone would be there. And I heard Ian Blackford talking about previous campaigns, and he said there were a lot of public meetings. So I assumed, that's a lot of hustings. So that if I stand in the election, I'm going to be in the same room as Ian Blackford, having conversation with him. Who knows, 4, 5, 6 times, get this filmed, anything could happen. This could be a real big breakthrough for the Scottish Family Party. So really I was thinking this would be an opportunity to get some video footage that would have national impact. So it was really a national campaign through a constituency. Now, election campaigns are a time when, as a political party, it's good to be involved in it. Politics is to the fore, it's to the forefront of people's minds, and if you're not involved, you're on the sidelines. But if you are involved, you can help raise awareness. And in Roscoe and Lochaber, I didn't think we really had much support there. It's maybe an area that we thought might be quite receptive to our views, so maybe it would be a good area to stand in, as well as the fact that it's Ian Blackford. So I thought, right, it'd be a good use of money and use of my time to go and campaign there for 3 weeks and raise the profile of the Scottish Family Party generally. So that was the plan. I would just stand in one constituency for that purpose. But then Liam McKechnie, as a Scottish Family Party member, he said he was very keen to stand in East Dunbartonshire. So I said, okay, go for it. So Liam stood in East Dunbartonshire. He didn't do the candidate mailing, where the Royal Mail deliver leaflets to every household. He didn't have the budget for that. He just had some general Scottish Family Party leaflets that weren't particularly about him or about this election. What he did have in his favour was some local contacts, and he ended up with 197 votes, which I think is actually pretty good. I mean, that almost matched UKIP. UKIP in that constituency got 208. Now, UKIP's very much a known quantity. There wasn't a Brexit Party candidate in that constituency, so you would think that people of that wavelength, more of them might have been attracted to UKIP. The UKIP candidate was the Scottish UKIP party leader, and yet Liam, as good as matched him, and that's really good. Look at another party that's getting off the ground without really, a public profile. That's the SDP. They've got some relatively high-profile people, within the world of politics involved in it. They have had candidates around Britain, and on average, their candidates, from what I can see, have got about 100 votes each. So Liam getting 197, I think that is really good. So well done to Liam, and well done to all those who helped him, leafleting and the other things that they did there. So that was great. Right, Roscoe and Lochaber. My plan in Roscoe and Lochaber was sort of a two-stage plan. First stage, we just stir things up a bit, do things that get a bit of attention, raise the profile before going into stage 2. Right, so in stage 1, I had the sign, if you support the SNP's promotion of pornography in schools, vote Blackford. We went and stood outside Ian Blackford's meetings. The first time we did it, he took the bait, did exactly what we wanted. He came out and said it was very offensive, he was going to report us to the police. So I made a little video telling the story, and that video was seen by about 35,000 people. You know, fantastic. On Facebook, our campaign and Twitter was really successful, reached a lot of people, particularly on Facebook. If you look at our Facebook level of engagement, it really is incredible. There's Facebook pages of the main parties that can have 100 times more followers or likes than we've got, and yet their level of engagement might be 3 or 4 times as high. So our Facebook campaign nationwide, really effective, fantastic. I also spent money promoting the Facebook things within Roscoe and Lochaber, roughly. You can't quite do it precisely, but roughly in that region. I'd say the response to that was not overwhelming. It wasn't like a massive response. I'm sure there were a substantial number of people in the constituency who liked the page or started following on Twitter or whatever, but it wasn't a massive amount, I'd have to say. But certainly whether they responded or engaged or not, they became aware of the party and saw what we were all about. Now, we did some leafleting in streets, just with our general Scottish Family Party leaflet that wasn't really ideal. A specific one to the constituency, to me, some local issues, whatever, would have been better. And our general leaflet does say that our main target is the Scottish elections, which is not ideal. Anyway, that's all we had. But the leaflet we had, the Royal Mail delivering to every house in the constituency, was very professional. Again, I think the issues we're raising, sometimes they need a bit more explanation for people, and you can't really do that in a leaflet. So, we tried to strike the right balance. Royal Mail initially didn't look like they were going to deliver it. It took them about 9 or 10 days to decide to actually deliver it for us. It should normally take a day to get a response on it. That's because they thought it was controversial. They obviously had their lawyers on the case. But eventually they did decide to send it. But by the time they sent it, quite a few people have already sent in postal votes. So that wasn't ideal at all. I mean, other little things. I mean, where I live in Edinburgh, at election time, the lampposts used to be covered in signs for all the parties. But now that just doesn't happen at all. It's obviously been banned. I assumed that was a Scotland-wide ban. But then when I arrived in this constituency up there, it obviously isn't, because there were signs on lampposts. If I'd have known you were allowed to do that, we probably would have had a few hundred of those done. And that might have been worth, half an hour every day, putting a few of those up as we travelled around. Something else we thought about doing. We had a tip-off that Nicola Sturgeon was going to do a pop-up rally in Perth in the High Street. So we thought, right, here's an opportunity. TV cameras, get our placards there. And again, it might get in the mainstream media, might make an impact. Who knows what's going to happen? Who knows how SNP supporters are going to react? Who knows how Nicola Sturgeon is going to react if we manage to sort of get that in her face somewhere? So we thought that would be a good use of a day to go and do that. So we took our placards, we looked at how we were going to get them modified so it wasn't about Blackford, it was about SNP. But then it was rained off. So that was a shame. I think it would have been good to go there and get a roll of the dice. But doing that sort of thing is the sort of thing we need to do. There was one where Joe Swinson was going to be in Edinburgh as well. And we would have come to that if it wasn't for a clash with something I was doing up in the constituency. It was interesting going around. Quite a few people you'd meet who had already heard of the Scottish Family Party. Occasionally you'd be in the street and someone say, oh yeah, I watch your videos, I follow on Facebook or whatever. So that's always nice. And that happens increasingly often, I would say. Right, coming back to hustings. It seems, from what I could pick up, that the hustings scene in Roscoe and Lochaber has basically faded away because in recent elections people have tried to set up hustings but the candidates won't come. So they're sort of given up. And by the time we got to this time, most places were just not bothering anymore. Let's say when I stood for election, 6 hustings in the constituency, every candidate, everyone. Whereas this one, the BBC arranged a hustings. BBC Radio Scotland said they were doing a hustings for the constituency, only they thought they'd decide which candidates they wanted there. And so myself and the Christian Party representative, they just said, you're not taking part. And that was that. Which I think if you're billing something as a hustings for a constituency, I think that's not on. But the BBC obviously did. So Ian Blackford's mission, I think, was to avoid coming face to face with me and the BBC helped him with that. So he was able to do probably the highest profile hustings and at the same time avoid having to face what I would have brought up with him. Right, the only other hustings that came up was one in Dingwall. So I had the email about it, a reply saying, yes, I'll be there. Then I went to a church in Dingwall one Sunday. I just happened to meet the bloke who was organising the hustings. And he said he was on the point of cancelling it. Well, he was going to cancel it for lack of response. He said the Lib Dem, for example, hadn't replied. So I'd been in contact with the Lib Dem candidate. So I got in touch with him and said, you know, you're not doing it. He hadn't heard of it. The message had got lost through the Lib Dem system. So he said he'd do it. So I got back to the organiser and said, look, the Lib Dem will do it. You know, can you please go ahead with it? Please do it. So he did. He went ahead. Ian Blackford, I think he was offered about 5 dates and he replied saying just no. And I think he also said, you know, don't bother with any more dates. I'm busy. Basically, I'm not doing it. And Labour as well couldn't supply anyone. These parties, not just the candidate didn't go, they couldn't supply a substitute. So the one in Dingwall, along I went. Now, I'm going to put modesty aside for a little while here, just to make my points. I mean, basically, I think I was the strongest candidate there. I think some of the others were very, very weak. Some of the others were, you know, not so strong. I mean, the Brexit Party candidate was talking about all sorts of wacky YouTube conspiracy theories. She said about, you know, vaccinations causing autism. I mean, this is completely discredited, quite a dangerous message. But, you know, but what difference does it make? I mean, that hustings, 40 people, what difference does it make? I mean, I was really happy with the way I performed in it in comparison to the other parties in particular. But how many votes was that worth? Maybe 5? Okay, we filmed it. I've got some clips of it online. Maybe that helps reach a few more people. Not quite sure. So Ian Blackford wouldn't turn up. So we tried to embarrass him with that. We got a story in the Press and Journal. There's a bit of social media comment. You know, Ian Blackford's hiding away as a bit of a coward. Okay, that probably didn't help his campaign. But so what? Did it make that much difference? Probably not. He made the right decision. If he had have turned up to that hustings, I would have been piling on the pressure on lots of issues. Like the sex education, I'd got some placards ready. So I was ready to stand up at the hustings on camera with some images and say, right, look, this is what's on it, and then stand right next to Ian Blackford. I mean, what would he have done? I mean, it would have been great. It would have been, it's theatre, but it would have had an impact. But he quite wisely avoided coming into the same room as me. A couple of radio interviews I did, one with the BBC, one with the local radio station. Again, modesty aside, I thought I did pretty well. The one on Radio Scotland was against Donald Boyd, the Scottish Christian Party leader. Again, I was really, really happy with how it went. But that was at 7 o'clock in the morning. How many people are listening to that? You know, the SNP probably got 50 mentions on that same day on Radio Scotland, whereas we just got that one little slot very early in the morning, not many people listening. So that's the frustrating thing with politics, is you can go in, you can perform really well, you can, I mean, again, modesty aside, outperform other candidates, other people, but the impact it makes is actually quite small on that platform. Now, in both my radio interviews, I brought up the SNP promoting pornography. I bring that up because it's punchy, it's quite shocking, and it introduces a topic, and it doesn't bring in LGBT things, which, you know, you're going off at a tangent there. It's something with maybe with a broader appeal to people who are more broadly concerned. So I bring that up, and in both cases, the interviewer is basically saying, wow, if that's true, that's quite shocking. And so with the Highland radio interview, I said to him, okay, he says that's quite shocking. I said, do you want to investigate it and actually report to your listeners about what you find? He said, oh, no. No, you've pointed in the right direction. It's up to them to do the research now. And the BBC interviewer, I mean, she was saying, you know, if that's true, that'd be quite shocking on you or whatever. I'm sure that's not the case. But again, will they then say, okay, let's find out. Let's help our listeners by getting to the bottom of this and telling them what the truth is? Not at all. The moment I walked out that door of the BBC recording office, that would be the last thought that got. The BBC would not be remotely interested in looking into that at all. That's the frustrating thing with politics. Local campaigning has a limited effect. It tends to be, you know, people say it's an air war. The mainstream media, etc., has a big influence. I mean, a big sign of that in this election was the SNP candidate who was dissociated from the SNP. They basically chopped them because of an anti-Semitism accusation against them. And the SNP said, right, this person is not an SNP candidate anymore. We're disowning them. And do you know how they did in the election? They won the seat from Labour. Okay, basically it's an independent candidate. I think it just shows that the vast majority of people in that constituency didn't have a clue what was going on. They go into the polling booth, that was the SNP candidate, because it was too late to change it, and they probably didn't have a clue what had gone on. Or even if they did know what had gone on, that the candidate had been sort of chopped for anti-Semitism, they didn't care. They were just going to vote for the SNP in any case. Now, another effect I found a few times talking to people in the constituency, they might be pretty negative about the SNP, but a few of them would bring up Kate Forbes. Kate Forbes is the MSP for basically sort of overlapping constituency. She's a Christian. She doesn't particularly speak about controversial issues publicly, virtually at all, I would say, but she's a Christian. And you can see the effect that has on people. It insulates the SNP from criticism. So you can start talking about the SNP and say, oh, we're concerned about this, this and this. But then it'll come around to, oh, you know, Kate Forbes. We know Kate Forbes. She's really nice, isn't she? And you can see, as I say, that it deflects criticism. It insulates the SNP. I'm going to talk about this a bit more in a series of videos I'm going to make soon. I think that's an interesting effect. Right, so the votes got 268 votes. I would say about half of those, just statistically, roughly, were probably already in contact with on social media before the campaign started. Right, the Christian Party were also standing in the constituency. They ended up with 460. Now the question's got to be asked, how does that happen? Again, modesty aside, and I need to make my points. Our campaign was better. Our party is growing and dynamic. The Scottish Christian Party is moribund. So how can that result be accounted for? Partly a degree of local familiarity. There's been Scottish Christian Party candidates, activism in that area over the last couple of decades, not particularly recently maybe, but there will be people who will have been aware of the Scottish Christian Party and people involved in it in the past. The candidates didn't live in the constituency, but it's not too far away, sort of from Inverness, so it's a local-ish candidate. His leaflet included some local issues. I'm not sure if that makes much difference, I don't know. But I think the main thing is identity voting. People just see Christian, think, yeah, I'm a Christian, right, I'll go for that. And the other effect that I think is very significant, I think a lot of those people voting for the Christian Party will be older people who are maybe not on social media, and they might have been completely untouched by the Scottish Family Party campaign. Maybe they got the leaflet, might have read it, might not, but that would have been the only contact they have with the family. As a Christian Party, they'll have had a leaflet and might have had some other awareness of the party as well. I think the Scottish Christian Party, the thing with that name is people can just, even if they know nothing about the party, they can see the name Christian, gives them an idea what it's about, and they can vote for it. It's like the Green Party. There isn't a name that we could have for our party that gives people the right idea. You know, the Scottish Socially Conservative Party. People just don't understand what it means. So that's an advantage that the Christian Party have got. Now, the Christian Party might have a core Christian, Brexit, unionist vote that they can appeal to, but it's never going to be enough to get MSPs elected into the Scottish Parliament. They're going to reach out more broadly. Now, I would imagine a lot of those people voting for the Christian Party, if I could make the case to them of why the Scottish Family Party model is better, I think they would be convinced and they would probably have voted for us. Now, everyone I talk to about this, I can always convince them. There's only two people I've ever spoken to who I couldn't convince that the Scottish Family Party model is better. And those two people were Donald Boyd, of the Scottish Christian Party leader, and Sidney Cordell, leader of the Christian Parties Alliance in the UK. Everyone else I've been able to persuade that our model's better. So then there, we didn't communicate with them. And I would imagine a lot of the reason for that is that these are people who are not on social media. Okay, so to summarise the whole thing, Liam McKechnie in Eastern Bartonshire, that was a really good result. Okay, so well done, very happy with that. Roscoe and Lochaber, the main thing is that the main target, the main reason for standing there was to get in the same room with Ian Blackford and to get video footage and to hit the news, basically, and to have drama and theatre and to have huge growth through Scotland through that. That plan was frustrated by Ian Blackford avoiding me and by the BBC helping him. Okay, 268 votes is not a disaster. It's disappointing, but it's far better than most new parties without a media profile get. I was never confident of a big vote. I didn't really know what was going to happen, but the main purpose was to raise the profile of the Scottish Family Party within the constituency and more broadly. So lots of people have seen the Scottish Family Party in action. They will help to spread the word. So probably a lot of the people couldn't vote for us because we didn't have a candidate there. And even the ones in Roscoe and Lochaber, they might not have voted this time, but we could have made a positive impression, and it's the Scottish election that really counts. So nationally, we've had lots of support and encouragement from all over Scotland. People saying, I wish you had candidates here, wish you had candidates here. But we've been in the game this time and we've made a positive impact. It's interesting to see the SNP in action with their armies of activists, and interesting seeing the Lib Dems in action with their piles of money. And you can see what a difference those things make. So as we build up, as the party continues to grow, we'll have more of those resources as well. I'd like to thank Dave Bestwick and Brian Lally for coming up and helping me in the campaign. Dave especially came and stayed for a few days. Was invaluable. He was my cameraman and doing all sorts of things as well. And thanks to Tom as well. Stayed there for a while. That was a really good support as well. And a huge thank you to all of you who donated to the campaign. It covered the leaflet, expenses for me, but a lot of it was spent on social media advertising. So that's raised the profile of the party quite significantly. So your support very definitely appreciated. Thanks to my family who've I've been away for the best part of the last 3 weeks, so thanks to them for tolerating that. We have the future of the Scottish Family Party. There's quite an exciting development in the pipeline. It's early stages, but we're just looking at some links with a Muslim movement to do with sort of sex education things in schools. That's very exciting, so very early stages, but as we move into next year, watch this space. I mean, just to finish on a lighter note, I had a chat with an SNP activist at a meeting. It was one of Ian Blackford's meetings. We'd been standing outside with a placard. A couple of people who'd been with me, they went into the meeting. I decided not to go in. It was quite full. So I just sat outside in the bar area. And an SNP activist came out. He got his SNP badge on. He seemed to know all the other SNP people. So we sat down and we had a chat. So he said, family party, what it's all about. So I said, we're pro-life. And he said, no, that's really bad. I said, well, do you value every human life? He said, no. I said, oh, okay. Which human lives don't you value? He said, religious people. He said, because they cause all the wars. Okay, so we moved on. And we got on to gender issues. I said to him, I think Nicola Sturgeon is a female supremacist. I think she believes that women are better than men. And to make the world a better place, you just need women in charge. And this chap said, yes, I think she's right about that. Absolutely. He said, look at the mess men have made throughout history. What we need now is to have women in charge. I said, so do you think it would be best if the Parliament was just full of women? He said, that probably would be a good thing. In the short term, in the longer term, you could maybe let some men in. But just to sort out the problems, yeah, having an all-female Parliament would be a step forward. And then went on to say that he thinks ideally most boys should be castrated and just leave enough for reproduction. Most of them have them castrated, and then you'll get better citizens and a more harmonious society. The bloke was not joking, he was deadly serious. It just made me think of the BBC or whoever, if they've got it in for a party, they find people within the party with wacky views and they string them all together and make a documentary about it to completely discredit it. Well, if anyone wanted to do that to the SNP, head up to Fort William and find this chap to have a talk to. But anyway, so thanks for your support and encouragement in the campaign. If you're not a member of the Scottish Family Party, do join via our website. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the growth of the party continue to accelerate through 2020. Thanks.